How we doing, guys? And welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Here with me, my good friend, Mr. Michael Zappy.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
Doing well, man. A lot better than the Houston Astros are.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, man. The long ball has been the way. Phillies tie a World Series record with 5 home runs tonight, as they are well on their way to taking a 2-1 series lead against the Houston Astros. And non-baseball related, but something that I found kind of interesting and funny was that one of the more famous pizzerias in the Philadelphia area actually refused to cater to the Houston Astros. So I thought that was, listen, you know how I feel about Philly in general and their teams, but I like that.
It's funny you say that because Houston hasn't exactly had some friendly experiences up in the Northeast when, of course, you had the instance when they were in New York trying to get their hotel because the game was delayed and they had to split up the team. And then now this with in Philly with the pizzeria, that's actually really funny.
It is. It is. Northeast fans, definitely a different breed. And, man, the Phillies, we said it earlier on the show how this team had the Washington Nationals vibes, a team that actually beat the Houston Astros a couple of years back, right after current Philly, Bryce Harper, departed. They did that without him, which was pretty remarkable. It's only one game. It's a very decisive loss, or soon-to-be loss. But I got to say, maybe getting a little ahead of myself, I did pick the Astros in 7. I had a feeling the Phillies were going to give them all they can handle. But if the Astros are to lose this series, do they essentially become this generation's version of the 90s Braves? A team that constantly was in the World Series in the 90s, but was only able to get one series victory. In the Astros case, that series victory was very tainted. The whole 2017, the victory over the Los Angeles Dodgers. I don't know. I would have to venture to say that perhaps it does kind of put them in that air with the Braves of the 90s. A team that got the decade stolen away from them from my New York Yankees. I don't know. It's interesting right now. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the postseason this year, it was kind of we were.
Zappy, you hear me, bud?
Coming into this year's postseason, we were saying that how it was going to be either the Astros or Dodgers that could be that team, that Braves of the 90s. And right now it's not looking good for the Astros, because it's not like they're losing games 7-6 where both are hitting and it just comes down to that last inning. I mean, right now the Astros hitting has been almost non-existent for a lot of their key players. Alex Bregman did have a nice homer in game 2. Kyle Tucker had a good couple home runs in game 1, but Jose Altuve, he's been non-existent. Jordan Alvarez has not really been there. I mean, this team has just disappeared. Justin Verlander had a good couple of innings, and then after that, he fell apart. So it's almost reminiscent of the '90s Braves. It really is. And then really, as far as their World Series goes, if you really break it down, they haven't really won one because that 2017 World Series did get stripped from them. So I guess it depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't get stripped from them, but there were a lot of repercussions that came after it. Obviously, the firing of A.J. Hinch and the year ban, which I still think was kind of a slap on the wrist. There were other repercussions from guys that were involved with that Astros squad. Most recently, Carlos Beltran, just a couple of years ago, was the Met manager for just a little while. And he literally was out because of his connections with the scandal. I think the Mets did pretty good getting Buck Showalter. But there's a lot of interesting stuff to take away from the series should the Phillies win because, the Phillies were third place in their division. This will be the third time the Houston Astros lose to an NL East team in the World Series. Once again, a nice little Braves comparison when you consider that the Braves lost 3 World Championships to AL East teams in the 90s. Their other loss was to the Minnesota Twins, but they had a loss to the Jays, 2 to the Yanks, and they defeated the Cleveland Indians. If
so
you
the
want to
Astros
break,
need to face an NL Central team to win the World Series.
Clearly, it seems like they're not going to be able to beat anybody from the East. On our MLB prediction show preview, early in the literally a week before the year started, I did the show with Richie Dorney, good friend out on Long Island, diehard Mets fan. He predicted Astros Mets. I predicted Yankees Mets. Dorney got one team correct. I missed both teams. My closest pick got to the ALCS, but I'm not counting out the Astros just yet. I think we would be ignorant to do that. But yeah, definitely cause for concern. Verlander struggled with a high pitch count against the Yankees. They were not able to get to him, but they definitely made him work. And then you look at his exploits in Game 1 of the World Series, couple of good innings, then fell apart. So when that's your Cy Young award winning or best pitcher in baseball, not being able to get it done, and the Phillies did it the hard way. They had to go into a series against a very good Cardinals team that we didn't even give Philly a chance. We certainly didn't think they had a chance in the next round against the Braves.
And not only that, it came down to the end of the season for them to get into the playoffs. They literally had to do it the hard way.
Yeah, like every bit of difficult and the gauntlet that was in front of them. When you look at a team like the Mets that kind of fell apart down the stretch, man, the Phillies definitely, if they're only 2 games away now, I still stand by my pick, Astros in 7. But they're going to have to win one in Citizens Bank Ballpark, and that is definitely not a guarantee. They got to win one in order to extend it to Houston. But Jose Altuve, you made mention of him. I mean, that dude has literally been cold going back to the Yankees series.
Yeah. I mean, I think
or even the Seattle series for that matter.
Yeah, I think he's got a batting average of 136 in this World Series so far. I mean, it's ridiculous when you consider him. I mean, many people consider him the star of the team, the leader of the team, But hey, we'll see. I stand by it too. I still think the Astros will win. It might not be in 6 anymore. It'll probably be in 7. But honestly, Game 4 is now that pivotal for the Astros. They have to win tomorrow in order for them to win this series.
I'll be honest. I don't even necessarily think being down 3-1 is a death sentence. They basically got to get the series back to Houston. If that series goes back to Houston, I think the Astros are going to win, but I will say this. I do believe that the home advantage in Philly is much more than what they have in Houston, and, Philly already won over there. Listen, I don't wish anybody losing a job. I'm not that guy. But I am the guy that's going to celebrate when there's chaos in Brooklyn, that other team, and then you had these Fugazi Knicks fans who suddenly were Brooklyn fans. Guys, Brooklyn, formerly ABA, New York Nets. Unless if you were down with them back then, I don't want to hear nothing about no Brooklyn Nets fans. The rivalry with New York and New Jersey during those years was very real. I'm talking about old school stuff like the Patrick Ewing, Drazen Petrovic era, like taking it back that far. Even a little more recently when they had J. Kidd and we had Steph Marbury. But to think that Knicks fans fled and want to be Nets fans because it was like the easier thing to do, dude, I hate this organization. And I guess the question is the former 2-time league MVP Steve Nash, was his firing directly caused by Pri and Donna over in Brooklyn? I'm talking about Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Do you think this was a direct cause of these two?
I mean, I think it had a lot to do with it because we had Kevin Durant demanding Steve Nash's firing, and I mean, let's just look at the offseason for this team. We can look at a lot of factors for this team. I mean, this team is a complete embarrassment to the NBA right now. You look at all the comments that
Can you
Kyrie
say that
Irving,
one more time?
a complete embarrassment to the NBA right now.
I
They are, look at everything from Kyrie Irving and his stance against the vaccine, Kyrie Irving and all his comments he has been making that has really irritated a lot of people, where you have fans now wearing anti-Semitism shirts in basketball games just to get under Kyrie's skin, and I mean, it's just, there's too much. And in a way, I feel good. I actually feel like this is a blessing for Steve Nash that he doesn't have to deal with the prima donna going on there.
I tend to agree, because what I find so funny about all of this is Kevin Durant was holding this organization hostage. And I got to say, it's very ungrateful in the sense, because a lot of teams are not going to pay you a max contract when you are out for a year and there is no guarantee if you're going to be that same player. I'm, of course, referring to when he left the Golden State Warriors and when he was out for his first year as a Brooklyn Net. And, Kyrie, I think, essentially came to the reasoning that it was his best deal to stay there. But then you got the Ben Simmons factor. And when you look at this team, it's just a lot of mercenaries that are all doing a great deal of complaining. And I'm happy that these guys, the New York Knicks, are building their team more of a functional way. They could have made a big splash with Utah and given up all kinds of draft capital. But I think the Knicks are staying true to themselves, and they are in a better position because I think the window has already closed on that championship they were supposed to win. They had Milwaukee on the ropes. KD stepped on the line. The rest is history. Brooke Lopez had a great block on Kevin Durant in that series, too.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I forgot
Right
about that.
On the glass, dude, just pinned him. But, yeah, I'm kind of getting my chuckles right now because, being a Knicks fan's not easy. It would have been very easy for me to root for somebody else. They're my team for life, and they are the only team in New York that matters.
And well, that's
in the NBA.
And that's the difference between being a fan and being a loyal fan, because you have your fans that are going to bounce around. Oh yeah, I've been a fan of this team for a long time, and of course, NBA is one of those sports where it's easier to follow the player as opposed to the team.
Oh no, for sure. I have no issue with supporting a player, but I come from the era of watching NBA basketball where guys took more of an onus on representing a team for their careers, that it was very important to them. Yes. Guys like Reggie Miller. Yes, Patrick Ewing ended up leaving the Knicks.
But he was at the tail end. Yeah, he didn't want to. He was at the tail end of his career.
He didn't want to. You could name a ton of players from that era.
I was going to say, with the exception of maybe Shaq. Grant Hill.
Yeah. Shaq was a mercenary. It is what it is. But, Shaq wanted to be in Hollywood, and it made sense. And I still think all these years removed, it was probably the right move.
Oh, absolutely.
And speaking of moves.
Last thing. It is, what was funny, though, is to see the Bulls beat the Nets tonight, even after the firing of Nash.
No, they're a bad team, and I'm gonna enjoy watching this fire. That's all I wanted to say about that. And Knicks are gonna get over the hump with them because last year the Knicks just could not beat them. That's not gonna be the case this year. Why buy Zap? Chase Claypool for a second rounder. I understand if the Bears are a contender this year. That I understand. But once again, when you see what the Steelers got for this guy, as a Giant fan and being a person that wanted to upgrade the receiver position, that's too steep for a Chase Claypool as far as I'm concerned. I think the Steelers did great on this deal. The Bears get a good receiver. Yes, they do, and they need one. Allen Robinson is now a member of the Rams. But, nah, dude, that's too much. And in my eyes, that's too much for a Chase Claypool. If it said Jerry Jeudy on there, then maybe I could co-sign that a little better.
Yeah, between that trade, I mean, obviously Pittsburgh won that trade, landing a second round pick for a Chase Claypool. Um, as far as Chicago goes, I'm really confused at what they have been doing this last few days. I mean, first of all, trading Robert Quinn and then Roquan
Yeah,
Smith, and then
you get rid
trading.
of defense and you bring in offense.
And I get that because you do have the number one ranked running team in the NFL, and a lot of it has to do with. I mean, they have a good line, they have a great scheme,
Yeah, they
but
do.
they have no receivers. So yes, you go out and get a receiver, which also allows them that the receiving class in this upcoming draft is not as deep as last year's class, but it is a pretty good class. And
There's
they can
still good
still,
talent to be had in round 2 and 3, and I think that's a reason why a couple of teams, my team namely, avoided parting with a second or possibly even a third.
yeah, and I think that's the thing that bothers me because Chicago, you could see they're there. I mean, if you really break down this Chicago team, they are in great shape for next year. I mean, this
And
team
they're
has over 100.
competitive.
They're competitive. They have $100 million in cap space for this upcoming free agency. They're going to be in a good draft position. So I get why they went after because you've got to get some sort of veteran in there with Darnell Mooney. You need someone else for Cole Kmet. They've got two good running backs. So I kind of see why they did it. But giving up a second round pick, it's a little because I mean right now it looks like that second round pick is likely going to be a top 45 pick.
When I look at Chase Claypool, I don't think he's a top 3 receiver on his team. Therefore, that doesn't warrant a second round pick. It's that simple.
Yeah, it's Claypool. He's been one of the most inconsistent. Everyone was awed by his performance, his breakout performance, scoring 3 touchdowns. Was it 2 years ago in a game, and then just blowing up? But then he had the opportunity to take on the lead role, and he didn't exactly succeed at that.
And to
You know,
his defense, they did have some quarterback issues. They had an aging Ben that was a shell of himself. And right now, Pickett is in a position to be the dude. It's going to take time. The Mitchell Trubisky experiment didn't go as planned. I actually myself thought that he might have survived the season. That did not end up being the case.
Yeah, well, time will tell. I'm sure we'll revisit this topic in a year, and the Bears might look like a smart team. I'm not saying they're going to win the division next year because I still believe they're a couple years away from being competitive, but I think we see that. All right, one, they didn't want to pay their linebacker in Roquan Smith. He was going to be a free agent after this year, and it's better to get what they. I mean, they got a good draft haul for it, and they got a receiver that has another year on his contract. And if he has a breakout year next year, they can pay him. They don't have anyone else to have to worry about. Justin Fields is still on his rookie deal, so there's a lot of pros and cons on this trade. Right now, I see more cons, but time will tell if Matt Eberflus made the right move by going after a Chase Claypool, and then we'll see what they do in the draft as well and free agency. So time will tell.
This one I like. Naheem Hines to Buffalo for Zach Moss. Moss is going to Indy. The Buffalo Bills get better here. You get a reliable pass catching back. You got Devin Singletary, who for the time being is going to hold off Cook. For now, that's not permanent, but for now, I think it's just fine-tuning a team that is likely going to the Super Bowl and, in my opinion, is going to win it, whether it be the Cowboys, Eagles, Vikings, dare I say my New York Giants, somebody else out of the NFC, the Niners, of course, are going to have something to say in the second half of the year. Buffalo's the best team in football right now as far as I'm concerned, and I think that this, on some levels, helps complete that offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was pretty evident this team was trying to land Alvin Kamara. The injury to Mark Ingram made it a lot harder for the Saints to move on from an Alvin Kamara.
I'm not even sure if they were totally serious, but I'm sure like anything else, when you have an outstanding talent, you got to listen.
You got to listen, exactly. But as far as the Bills go, not only are they getting themselves a very good, reliable third down option. I mean, this is a guy that can run the ball, but more importantly, he can line up in the slot and he's quick. I mean, this completes that offense between Jamison Crowder, McKissick, and now Naheem Hines. You know, you still have Devin Singletary, which he's progressively been getting better year by year.
I agree, because a year and a half ago, I wasn't too sold on him. I think now he's in a position where he can hold off Cook for a little while. I didn't necessarily feel that way a couple of years ago because, quite frankly, I didn't even know if he was going to beat out Zach Moss.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people thought that Zach Moss was drafted to replace him. But sometimes you just need to light that fire under someone's butt to really get the best out of them. And they did. The drafting of James Cook, the first thing that people thought about with James Cook was his brother Dalvin Cook. And like, he's the second coming. And Devin Singletary, all he's done is run the ball very well for this team. So
he's trying to hold on. He wants to continue to remain the main option. This deal, we spoke on this before the show off air, in my opinion, and as well as yours, appears that Buffalo may be out of the Odell sweepstakes. As you alluded to, the main thing you said was he can be put in the slot, Naheem Hines. This leads me to believe that there are some teams that are going to be looking for Odell's services, but I do think that this may have eliminated the Bills. We'll see. I mean, an injury to Jamison Crowder or McKenzie or both or one, that could change things. The Giants stay put. Earlier in the week, they acquired a third and a sixth next year in exchange for Kadarius Toney. Now, yeah, I have to think that this, at minimum, leaves the door open for an OBJ reunion, especially considering that the New York Giants are in a position that makes them look attractive. They could very well be, even as a third-place team, looking at an 11 to 12-win season, given the favorable schedule down the stretch. And I have to say, other candidates still include the Bills. You can't take the Bills out of it. The Chiefs, I would say, are out. Your Cowboys, definitely got to consider them. And I would say maybe as a dark horse for Odell, maybe the Ravens. But what are your thoughts here? Where do you think he goes? I don't think he's going back to the Rams, given how bad the Rams are right now.
Well, the first thing I want to say is, you look at how much the wide receiver position has evolved over the last year. And what I mean by that is we are on the verge of getting a $30 million per year receiver. Probably going to be Justin Jefferson. It could be Jamar Chase, but it's coming. And just last year, we were talking about $20 million per year being a lot. And now that's petty cash. And then you look at
they're the other part of that.
Exactly. And then you look at the Chiefs giving up a third and a sixth for Toney. And then you see the Bears giving up a second for Claypool. To me, that hurt the Giants and the Cowboys.
I actually think the Giants dealing Toney hurt their own.
It hurt, but that was
it helped
the
too,
foundation.
Because getting a third for him, I thought, was a steal.
No, yeah, it was a great move for you guys, but
it also hurt.
It
created
the
bargaining table trying to get one of these other dudes.
Absolutely, because when you look at the receivers that were being talked about being traded, it was obvious, and I kept mentioning to you that Jerry Jeudy made the most sense, and then the whole Alabama connection with him and Brian Dable, and then to find out that the Giants were in hard, and they ended up tabling the talks because, the Broncos wanted a one for him. Is he worth does he deserve a one? No, I don't think so. And the guy
that's
hasn't shown enough.
That's absurdity.
It is. But it just goes to prove how much that position has evolved. Then you look at a Brandon Cooks, for example. Dallas and Houston were negotiating towards the last minute, apparently. And I firmly believe what crashed that negotiation was because of his guaranteed contract next year of $18 million and his cap hit of $23 million, that Dallas was asking Houston to eat up some of that cap. And I'm sure the Giants were doing the same. But once again, what I told you yesterday when you asked me, would I do it? Would I trade something like that for a Jeudy or a Cook? And I said no in the Giants case because the Giants have more holes. they need those top picks to build the team. Because right now, what Brian Dable is doing with this team, with a bunch of, I mean, with the exception of true Giant fans, there is not that many people that can name a lot of players off that Giants team. I'm sorry, that's just that team.
There've been a couple of diamonds in the rough that I'm happy about. Jihad Ward is a guy that I think has really shown up and a guy that deserves to be Cager. I think he could be cultivated into being a very good receiver. The Bellinger pick, I'm not shocked by his good performance prior to the eye injury. I am optimistic about Hudson, but to your point, these are not household names. The most expensive guy on our roster right now is not contributing at all to our team. That, of course, being Kenny Golladay.
Golladay, Mr. Payday.
Yeah, but he's going to have to make a contribution. Bottom line, he has to make a contribution if this team is going to keep pace. There's a lot of good. Winning close games in this league is a show of true leadership, and it's a show of progression amongst the players that you're leaning on to make this happen. In this case, on offense, that being Saquon Barkley, and then, of course, quarterback Daniel Jones. But when I think about what the Giants still need, you need a corner opposite of Adoree'. That would actually be what I would do in round 1. Now, when you go into round 2/round 3, now I'm thinking about getting another run stopper. We do struggle against the run, and I'm thinking about getting a wide receiver or two. It's going to be a good offseason. We're getting some compensatory help as well. Giants are going to have 11 picks going into the draft next year, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now, when I look at – go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, and because of through 8 weeks of the season, seeing the Giants sitting there tied for second place with the Dallas Cowboys at 6-2, it's pretty safe to say that the Giants, the Cowboys, they're going to be picking in the 20s.
Yes.
It's very hard to see that either one of those teams, unless there's a complete meltdown or a really bad injury that sets either of those teams back. But yeah, and for that case, to your point about a cornerback, that now puts the Giants in a draft position where cornerback makes the most sense. Of course, if they were a top 10 pick, no, you go after whatever the best player available is at that position.
Yeah, it's always BPA when you're picking in the top 10.
Exactly, and when you're in the 20s, BPA is usually cornerback.
Correct.
So
correct.
And then going back to the whole OBJ thing, the ball's in his court. The guy said that a couple days ago that he was going to make his decision after the trade deadline. The trade deadline has come and passed, and I think we have now a clear picture as to which teams in the NFL have separated themselves.
Yes.
Then you look at teams like the Packers and Rams. The Packers, to me, are not a wide receiver away from fixing this. This team has enormous amount of talent on the defensive side. Players that were drafted
underachieving, bro.
They're underachieving. Players that were drafted in the first or second round. This should be a top 5 defense, and they have not shown up.
But I do think that in time, that whole Devontae Adams trade and the haul they got for it is going to pay dividends. Right now, it's not happening. And I got to say, it just goes to show you that you cannot put a price on experience, and you cannot put a price on, wartime together, so to speak, in terms of going through the battles, doing these things together as a team.
Yeah, and that, for what you just said right there, is the reason why I don't think OBJ will go to Green Bay. Because not only are you bringing in – yeah, they're not a contender, but imagine you have an Aaron Rodgers making a comment about Odell Beckham Jr. Oh my God, that locker room
it's gonna blow up. It's gonna blow up quick. I could see him going to your team for a litany of reasons. I could see him coming back to the Giants for the sheer fact that the Giants are gonna really need him. And one thing about Odell, if you look at his track record on and off the field, he is a person that wants to be wanted and wants to feel that the team genuinely needs him. And of course, there's a connection there. Dave Gettleman is gone, the man that traded him. Landon Collins came back. He has friends on that roster. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out.
I want to know what his opinion is on Daniel Jones, how he feels about him. I think that's going to be the ultimate decision, because if you were to ask many receivers to choose between a Dak Prescott or Daniel Jones, I think a lot of, just based off of the last couple of years, recent history says that they would probably choose Daniel Jones. Although this year Daniel Jones has been playing phenomenal football. I mean, he has made leaps and bounds of progress over the last few years. And but the big thing for me is is he trying to go to a team where it's one thing to be wanted. Is he trying to go to a team where he's going to be the number one receiver? Is he trying to go to a team where he's going to be a huge factor? That's why I look at a team like Dallas, who clearly needs a receiver ever since we made the stupid trade of getting rid of Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick. But that was just a slap at Amari because he didn't want to get vaccinated. Whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But I think the next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting, but I would not be surprised if it came down to your team and my team when it's all said and done.
I consider the Ravens a dark horse, and after the Nyheim Hines move and the fact that Buffalo already has 2 quality guys that play slot in Crowder and McKenzie, I just don't see it happening. Odell is going to go back to the NFC East or to Baltimore. I'm going to leave that there for now. You were very big on this one. I'm going to let you rip on this. Bradley Chubb to the Miami Dolphins, and I'm going to make a quick mention here. Another quality move, not of the same stature, but I like this. And there's that San Francisco connection also with Raheem Mostert in that backfield. But let's take it back over here. Bradley Chubb to the Dolphins.
Yeah, and I was sitting there, and I mean, it made the most sense because the one thing that has been plaguing this Miami Dolphins team, with the exception of the injury to Tua, and, Teddy Bridgewater played okay, but he couldn't get a win.
With Tua, this team wins games, bottom line.
They win games, absolutely. And I don't even know where to start with this team, first of all. I'm going to get all my points out for the Dolphins. But they were a pass rusher away. Jordan Phillips has not made – or Phillips, I can't remember his first name. Jordan Phillips plays for Buffalo. But their rookie last year out of Miami, he has not made the strides in year 2 that warrant him being the number 1 pass rusher. They needed that. And when I saw it was the Jets and Dolphins, I don't know how many times I texted you saying, hey, man, the Jets and Dolphins are in really hard on Bradley Chubb. Then the reports came out about, the Broncos are not giving up Chubb. I didn't believe that one bit.
No, they wanted to wait it out and get the best deal possible.
And they did. They did. And, for Bradley Chubb, who is still a very young player at NFL years, and a Dolphins defense that's actually very good, this is a match made in heaven type of marriage for both. And the Broncos, they do get some good trade equity.
They need it.
They need it. Absolutely.
They got to get some of those draft picks back after the Russell Wilson deal.
And it blows my mind, not to move away from Miami, but it blows my mind that this Broncos team at this point last year had the likes of Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, and in the span of 365 days, they have gotten rid of Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, and replaced them with Randy Gregory, who has not done anything for them.
I don't even think either one of those are a big deal. I mean, the fact that you lost Noah Fant, that's devastating. All right. Okay, sorry.
But anyway, no. But as far as Miami goes, I mean, the 2 deals they made today, they are in. They're in for this year. And I think it's a lot to show that a lot of the teams that made trades today are in for this year.
Buffalo too.
They have the victory over Buffalo.
And similar to the Eagles and Cowboys and Giants in the East, Philly is mighty. Buffalo's mighty. But the Cowboys and Giants both believe that they have a puncher's chance against Philly, if not more than a puncher's chance. And I believe that the Dolphins do genuinely believe that player for player on offense, they can hang with Buffalo.
And, I mean, it's easy to hang with teams when you have the likes of a Tyreek Hill and a Jalen Waddle that defenses cannot ignore, not even for one play. Because if you blink an eye, I mean, we're talking about a receiving duo that is on pace, more than on pace, for one of them to break Calvin Johnson's record of most receiving yards in a season. But secondly, for the 2 of them to not only have over 1,000 yards receiving, but we're talking about one of them having over 2,000 yards and one of them having over 1,500 yards. That's unheard of That's insane.
And that's why receivers are starting to get into that next plateau, as you mentioned earlier, with the salaries. It's a pass-happy league, and, it has to, yeah, quarterback-driven league, I get it. But quarterback-driven league that keeps driving the force because you got to make these catches, and wide receivers, they're not all created equal, and some are truly phenomenal. As far as I'm concerned, the greatest offensive player in the history of this league was a wide receiver. Of course, we're talking about Jerry Rice.
Jerry Rice, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
I mean, but I got to tip my hat off to the Miami Dolphins organization, because when the San Francisco 49ers offered him the draft haul so they could trade up and get Trey Lance, it was pretty much 3 first-round picks.
Yeah, the Dolphins made it work.
And you know what? Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and Bradley Chubb.
Bradley Chubb. That is a hell of a haul.
That's a hell of a haul.
At the beginning of it and how it ends, yeah, the Dolphins did very good, and it's not something that historically, more recent history, people are used to saying about when the Dolphins make these kind of deals. This one I'm trailing you in our fantasy league by 2 games. You're 7-0. Excuse me. You're 8-0. I'm 6-2. I got T.J. Hawkinson. I recently acquired him. He's having, in some people's estimations, a career year. This is a rare divisional trade. I do believe that it helps both teams. When you're 1 and what are the Lions? 1-6, 1-5 right now. 1-6. They're horrible.
They're 1 and forever.
Yeah, 1 and forever. Okay, heard. So when you're in a position like that, and once again coaching turnover is on the horizon, and once again the same old Lions, yeah, getting more draft capital is the right thing to do. I'm happy for T.J. Hawkinson because he's a hell of a football player and he gets to play with a contender. Am I happy that we play the Vikings when he's going to be on the team? No, not necessarily. This gives the Vikings a legitimate security blanket and a necessary add-on with the Irv Smith injury. Kirk Cousins now has 3 quality receivers. You have 1 top 5 receiver. I consider Thielen still in the top 25, let's say. I like this deal for Minnesota. I think on a lot of levels, this consistently completes their roster. I really mean that. And, they're one of those teams that when you look at the record, you're like, okay, what's wrong with them? You always try to find the weaknesses. This is a team that essentially could have completed their offense with this deal.
Yeah, and, you look at this, to start with Detroit, I understand completely why they did this trade because, one, T.J. Hawkinson's about to get paid. Secondly, this Detroit team, they're still building. Obviously, this upcoming draft is going to be focused on the quarterback. They have 2 picks now that are going to be in the top 15. I mean, they've had 2 first-round picks, but based on the trade they made for Matthew Stafford with the Rams and where the Rams currently sit, they have 2 top 15 picks where if it remains that way, you get your quarterback with your first pick, and that second pick, they can go out there and draft a Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame who easily replaces T.J. Hawkinson. And I'm not praising Michael Mayer. It's one thing college.
But, Notre Dame has done a good job of turning out quality tight ends.
They're tight end you. Yeah, they're tight end you. What Miami used to be is now what Notre Dame is today. And let's face it. I mean, it's very easy. Whenever you hear the words tight end and Notre Dame together, you know that you're going to get yourself a player.
No question. It's become a staple of that program. It really has.
But going back to Minnesota, yeah, it made sense. They had to do it. I mean, they talk his love there. He's a great receiving tight end. He's a great blocking tight end. However, the future of this team is it's still a distance away. A lot of us predicted the Lions to be a 7-win team this year, and quite frankly, I mean, I didn't do that show with you, but I had them winning 7 as well. And quite frankly, that defense has underperformed a lot. I thought they would have still traded Jeffrey Okudah today. Obviously, they didn't make any more deals. But as far as Minnesota goes, I mean, this is a great pickup for them. And once again, yeah, to be traded within not only your conference, but your division. And I made a comment to my buddy Matt saying that, wow, the entire North is literally coming together just to beat the Packers.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. And when you look at Tight ends. There's Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews who are neck and neck. And then second or third, I would say third, because Andrews I have slightly behind Kelce. Then after those two players, right now it's Hawkinson, because Waller has taken steps back. Kittle has been often hurt. And then you have other guys that are kind of in the middle of something, like a Dallas Goedert. He's good but not great. And, there's other players like a Dallas Goedert, like tight end on the Chargers, slipping my mind at the Gerald Everett.
Gerald Everett, yeah.
Tyler Higbee, he's kind of ascending. But the point is, those are the top three, and the Minnesota Vikings really helped their roster. This is the last one we're going to hit on before we talk about our Thursday night preview. Calvin Ridley's actually serving a year-long suspension. But I don't know. Do you consider this the most risky move of the deadline, or do you like this?
I like this move.
Okay.
I like this move. Because, I'm going to tell you why. Recent history has shown that year 2 to 3, we see a lot of jumps with quarterbacks. One of the big things that's been plaguing this Jaguars team is while they went and acquired some receivers in the offseason, they clearly don't have a number one receiver. So the verdict is still out on a Trevor Lawrence. And year 3 is usually when you find out if the quarterback you drafted is going to be the quarterback you pay for the future. Now you insert a Calvin Ridley, who is serving a suspension for an unfortunate, he made a bet on his team to lose, and he's still, whatever. But
how could there really be a future with that team after something like that?
From
a credibility level, and you talk about the Pete Rose thing. When I got involved with this podcasting, the first episode we ever did when I was a member of the Jordan Patrick Show was about AJ Hinch. It was a Super Bowl preview at that time, the Chiefs and Niners. It was about the late, great Kobe Bryant, but it was also about Pete Rose. And we did a segment about Hinch and Rose. Even Belichick got mentioned in there. And, they always say protect the shield, protect the shield, protect the shield at all costs. And when it comes to this Ridley, a year sounds like a long time, but I still think the repercussions could have been worse than this. So, getting a new start.
Yeah, getting a new start. And, really, Calvin Ridley, when you really look at him, he's one of the top 3 route runners in the NFL. He is, without question, a number 1 receiver. Without question. I don't care what anybody says.
What was the haul on this? What did Jacksonville give up here?
Gosh, I have to look at it real quick. It slipped my mind. I believe it was a second and a fifth. Oh, okay. It was conditional. It was a second and a fourth conditional that could turn into a third, and then they got back a fourth. So a second in next year's draft, a fourth in the following year's draft that can turn into a third, and getting a fourth back.
One thing I got to give Jacksonville props on, for better or for worse, they are not afraid to do unconventional thinking moves. They brought in Tim Tebow for a training camp. They brought in Urban Meyer.
That was
they passed on Aiden Hutchinson for Trayvon Walker. The jury still remains to see whose career is going to be better. You can't figure that out in year 1. I'm quite happy that my guys got Kayvon Thibodeau.
But no.
But the point I'm making is that Jacksonville's not afraid to do stuff like this. They recently moved on from James Robinson. He's a member of the New York Jets now.
Yeah. I like the trade. I really do. I think, for one, I don't know how Atlanta fans feel about Calvin Ridley after last year, the suspension, everything. But you're going to find out a lot. You now have Calvin Ridley, Marvin Jones, Christian Kirk,
Zay Jones.
Zay Jones. And then you have a good young offensive line. They didn't end up trading Josh Allen, so you still have a good young defense.
You have a running back to build around.
You have Travis Etienne. There are no more excuses next year for Trevor Lawrence. Mm-hmm. If Trevor Lawrence does not make that huge leap, because when you really look at the AFC South, it's there for them to take it next year.
Yeah, because you got what I would imagine would be this time next year. Malik Willis is probably going to finally take Ryan Tannehill's job for permanent. I still think the Titans are trying to figure out which way to go. The Texans are a dumpster fire.
The Colts,
and the Colts,
they're going to draft their future quarterback in next year's draft.
The Colts are definitely in transition right now too. Before we get out of here, we're going to hit you with our Thursday night preview. Not really a lot to see here. I mean, you're talking about an undefeated team. It is a short week. They are playing another professional team, but it would take a gargantuan effort, in my opinion, for the Texans to have a chance of upsetting the undefeated Eagles. I don't see it happening. I could see the Eagles getting off to a slow start, maybe for the first quarter. But in the end, I'm going Eagles 34, Texans 10. I think that they're going to do most of their van damage late in the second quarter, early in the third. And, do the typical Eagle thing. Kind of lay on them. I don't expect a lot of scoring in the second half. But poor matchup for the Texans all the way around. I try to look for what do they do better than the Eagles? Lose. Sorry.
Is that if we're talking about this year or as a franchise? Because as a franchise, we could say they both lose, but
yeah.
Eagles got that one, so I'll give them that.
Technically, nobody loses more than the Buccaneers if we're talking about franchise. And that's even post GOAT.
I'm going to tell you this. One of these teams has a number 3 offense. The other one has a number 31 offense. One of these teams has a number 4 defense. The other one has a number 30 defense. I think it's pretty easy to figure out.
So clearly the Texans pull off the upset, is what you're saying.
Exactly. They pull off the upset for having
the
least amount of fans to attend an NFL game.
The embattled Brandon Cooks. No, never mind. Nothing.
No, hey, I will say the one interesting thing about this matchup coming up is there's a World Series game on Thursday night.
This is more interesting than the game itself. But let's see
if you're a Texans fan, are you tuning into the Astros or are you tuning into the Texans? Probably the Astros. This game, I'm sorry. I try to find every possible something to praise Houston about, and I guess the only thing I can come up with is Dameon Pierce. But when you're facing that defense, it's really hard to find something. No, the Houston, I don't even know if they're going to be in the game for the first 6 minutes of the game. After that, I think it's going to be a blowout. Yeah, I have a very similar type of score, 37-7. Houston's going to get a gimme touchdown, and that's it. I just don't see much from them. I know the spread's 14. I know Houston's been playing some hard football, but we're going into the second half of the season.
I got them scoring early. It's going to be something silly early in the game that sets up a Houston score, and after that, it's going to be a lot of punting and a lot of 3-and-outs.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's really hard to break this game down and try to find something when there isn't really much to talk about.
But having said that, I'll tune in and I'll root for Houston because you never know. That's why they play the games.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll be watching just to see how Robert Quinn looks with an Eagles jersey on, just to see this team that's got one of the best pass rush win rate. They're number 3 in the NFL.
Yes.
And if they
having that great O-line.
Exactly. And if you can, I mean, they're only trailing Dallas and the 49ers or Buffalo. I can't remember which one it is. But if the acquisition of Robert Quinn, who is coming off an 18-sack season, only has 1 sack so far this year, but I believe him going into a much better situation, those numbers should go up a little bit. So we'll see. But yeah, it's just one of those games. You know, the schedule, it is what it is. Philly's going to get another win. And I don't believe the talk about undefeated is going to start yet, but I think it's going to start heating up the teapot. And we're going to get into that conversation here probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Now, before we get out of here, just want to let the listener/viewers know that we are going to be dropping our NFL Week 9 predictions and preview show. Look for that early Sunday morning. In addition to that, we are at the midway point, and I just want to make a quick mention that my guy, Brian Dable, at the midway point, I believe is going to be Coach of the Year. And I want to say that the Packers and Raiders are the two most disappointing teams in the NFL, given their in-season expectations. And I got to say, Davante Adams, do you miss Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers, do you miss Davante Adams? Both of them are losing without one another. And Davante had that ugly situation on the Monday night game not too long ago, too. It's just hasn't been a good year one. And revisiting our little TikTok video with Bretsky about the whole Derek Carr argument, Brett, between that and your Eli Apple proclamation, dude, you're 0 for 2 this year with this nonsense.
It's funny you say that because when we were doing our AFC West preview, and I was like, I don't even think Derek Carr improves, and he went on a whole tyrant. My buddy Brad went on a tyrant over social media with me that you ended up getting involved with, and I was like, are you guys really that big of fans on Derek Carr? And I mean, clearly, the addition of Davante Adams has not helped out, because I made the point. I don't know how many times I preached this, that I don't care what you do in college, it's not the same in the NFL, because you're talking about the best athletes from across the nation or even the world, with a few players. But, I have a question for you. Here we are, week 8's complete. We know about the haul the Raiders gave up to acquire Davante Adams.
I thought the Packers won that trade.
Yeah, exactly. We thought the Packers won that trade, but now both teams are not sitting pretty. Who really won that trade? I think both teams lost that trade. I still think the Packers win that trade. I just think it's going to take a little more time
to prove that they won that trade. But then again, if the Raiders go out and get themselves the quarterback of the future, who knows? This could change the whole narrative yet again that the Raiders win it. So I guess only time could give the true answer to that one. I say it's predicated on time. Time will give the answer. Little hot take I want to say before I get out of here. I'm looking at both conferences. I'm looking at surprises. I would have to say that the New York Giants and New York Jets are the two biggest surprises of each conference, respectively. But I think the Jets are going to fall out of the playoff race in the second half. And the biggest reason why is because I think that Zach Wilson's going to hold them back.
I would say the biggest reason why is not Zach Wilson holding them back. I think it's the injury to Breece Hall.
Oh, yeah. That goes hand in hand with Wilson doing, good shot on that. But, yeah, that does go hand in hand with I have a funny feeling Flacco might find himself back in the mix.
Yeah, and it's, you look at the Jets, and Robert Saleh has been really getting questioned hard about, is he going to make a quarterback change? Is Zach Wilson the answer? No, we like what we have. He's giving all the correct answers.
He has to, but outside of a good second half in Pittsburgh, it's been pretty bad.
It has been. And really,
but to their defense, Flacco wasn't exactly lighting up the world either.
But Flacco has also been in the league for a very long time and is on the downcline.
Yeah, he's a former Super Bowl MVP. He's been there. He knows what it takes to win, but a lot of the skills have left him. The Jets, I would have to say, out of the teams I look at in the AFC, I think they're going to be the ones that ultimately fall out. Who's going to replace them? I'm not sure just yet. That will be revealed, but I definitely think the team they just lost to, the New England Patriots, feeling pretty good about themselves after an embarrassing loss against the Bears. We both said how we feel about the Miami Dolphins. And
I believe we both had the Dolphins making the playoffs anyway.
No, for sure.
So I think it comes down to the Patriots and the Bengals, honestly, or even possibly the Browns. They came up with a win last night that, but if they can come up with another win, Deshaun Watson's only a couple weeks away.
Depending on how long this Jamar Chase injury is, and I did predict this going into the year, that I felt the Cincinnati Bengals were going to suffer from the Super Bowl hangover. I very much say that right now they are vulnerable, and that could very well happen because not so much that they lost an in-state rivalry. That's actually 3 consecutive losses to the Browns dating back to last season.
Yeah.
But they just look so terrible. And I'm like, damn, this team won the AFC last year, and similar to the team that beat them, looked like a shadow of themselves. The NFC, you got some teams that are going to be clawing at the end. And you have a team that has 4 losses already that's not going to be playing for top seed. But I do believe that the 49ers are definitely a scary team for anyone going into these playoffs. They have the track record of recency where they have played in 2 of the last 3 title games. They made a Super Bowl 3 seasons ago. They still have the same quarterback that played in that Super Bowl and the same quarterback that played last year in that situation, Jimmy Garoppolo, due to the Trey Lance injury. Never do I wish injury on any player. But for the 49ers' immediate goals, I do think that Jimmy G is the right person to lead them right now. And that's even if Trey Lance were healthy.
Yeah, and honestly, I think we just got a preview of what's to come with that offense with the acquisition of Christian McCaffrey, because we've already known Christian McCaffrey was a great running back. We've known this.
No,
and
for sure. But what he did was just outstanding.
It's outstanding. And when we talked about Christian McCaffrey coming into the year, all we said was, can he remain healthy?
And thus far, it was the same question. It was the same question with, his peer in the running back game, Mr. Saquon Barkley. Both of these dudes have been able, knock on wood, to remain healthy thus far, and they are both putting together some phenomenal seasons. So,
and I'm excited to see what Christian and Debo look like together. And then, not to mention, Elijah Mitchell is about to come back too for that 49ers team.
It's no secret.
Trading.
It's no secret that the power. There's no secret that the power is in the NFC East between the 3 teams. But when you look around that conference and say, who are other teams that can make a run? No, I'm still not buying Seattle. Yes, they beat my team this past week. They're much improved. And at this point, it looks like you can make an argument that these guys might actually make the playoffs. 49ers are the team in that division as far as I'm concerned. Last thing I got to say before I get out of here. You kept making fun of this, and it ultimately became true. If the Carolina Panthers would have beaten the Atlanta Falcons, they would have been in first. DJ Moore takes his helmet off after a miraculous catch, which sets back the extra point to, I believe it was like 46 or 48 yards. They missed the extra point attempt, then they lose. So we were that close to the PJ Walker-led Carolina Panthers post-CMC that could have been in first. But
and not only that, in overtime, once again, that kicker had his chance of redemption.
But you know how bad of a like who does that? But
in DJ Moore's in his defense, that should have never been a penalty. He was not on so the head of officiating has come out. The Dean Blandino has come out. That should have never been a penalty because he was not on the field to play. So because of that reason, it was another instance where the officials dropped the ball, and because of their decision to throw a flag, it determined the outcome of the game. So yes, DJ Moore did something that it was easy to accuse him of. However, he was not in the wrong. And it was just because of the situation. I'm sure when you see a Hail Mary pass to tie the game at 34 where the team is set up to win the game, helmet's off, this and that, everything happening so quick. Yeah, you throw the flag. But no, DJ Moore actually was not in the wrong for that situation. That flag should have never been thrown. It should have been a normal extra point. And then in overtime, the Panthers still lined up for Pereira or whatever the kicker's name is.
Pinheiro, I believe.
Pinheiro, thank you. For Pinheiro to kick the game-winning kick in overtime. And once again, wide left. So, it's funny we talk about that because then we would have had a 4-way tie at 3-5 in the South. But no, DJ Moore was not in the wrong.
But how do you come – I'm not going to defend him as hard as you, Zap. Use your brain. It's still dumb. I'm sorry, it's still dumb.
It's dumb, but
it's still dumb.
It's another thing that the NFL needs to address, and they need to change that rule.
It's a lot of things they need to address.
They changed the excessive celebration, and they've made it fun. That's another one that needs to be changed. And
I don't even know why they're wearing helmets anymore with all the rules.
Well, we're almost there. Anyways, this has been a fun show, man. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, this was good. Week 9 preview Sunday morning. Until next time, I am Richie. He is Zappy. Thank you so much for watching. We are out.